My name is Joan Linnehan from Scituate, Massachusetts. My parents both came from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where their fathers and grandfathers had also lived. My great-grandfather, Cornelius Linnehan, wasn't home much because he was a salesman for Collier's publishing company that published Bibles. And he traveled all around New England with a horse and cart selling Bibles to the immigrant Irish girls who were servants in the great houses. So a lot of my relatives were involved in publishing and the book companies that were in Boston. That's one family. Let's see. On my father's side, my grandfather sold car parts when cars first came out, the Model Ts, and he was basically local, didn't travel too much outside the Boston area. And trying to remember now. Oh, my mother's father sold, just drove a laundry cart around Boston, the Harvard Square area, to the hotels and restaurants. So that was all by horse and cart. My grandmother had a soul, and she reached out to anyone in the neighborhood who needed a place to come or to have a meal. She had 9 children of her own, but there was always welcomed in someone that was in need. These are the stories I heard when I was growing up. And she never sat down at the dinner table with the family. She always stood up and was there to get food for the others. And she ate later, I guess, in the evening. Let's see. But going back a couple of generations on my father's side, there was an ancestor, I think my great-great-grand-uncle was purportedly, anyway, Morris Linnehan, who was a historian in Ireland. He was a newspaper publisher in Nenagh, County Tipperary, and he wrote a book called The History of Limerick, which I researched a little bit in Ireland. And I have a copy of it. I guess it's worth some money now because it's out of print. And I'm not certain where they were. Well, he was in Limerick for a while anyway, but I think originally he was from Waterford. So I've been researching a little bit by bit. Let's see. Lots of books in our family in publishing and history. My grandfather on my father's side lived with us for a while, and when I was a small child told us about the famine. So I think that really impressed me as a child. And I remember one story, he said when the families didn't have enough food or enough meat, they'd have a potato and they could rub it up against the meat just to get the flavor of it. But I think at large a lot of people didn't talk about it because it was such a depressing time, a tragic time. I traveled to Ireland a few years ago to research another branch of the family named Lally. This was my mother's father's mother's family, and I'm trying to remember how I found out about them through various relatives' notes. And that family was from Ballynakill, near the town of Glinsk in Galway, East Galway, but it was the closest town was Roscommon Town. So I traveled there and I met a woman I went into the local pub after Mass got out, and the man sitting at the bar's name was Tom Lally, just like my great-grandfather was. So we talked and he said, well, come with me. Down the street and around the corner was his sister Mary Lally, and she told me more of the history. And I could see the farms there. It was all farmland. And she told me that they were millwrights and woodworkers, and they built the wagon wheels and also the big window frames for the great houses around there. So that was another little tidbit that I got from another branch. I think that's about it, all I can remember of the details.